Good morning and happy Sunday, everybody. It's so nice we have moved into spring, as you can see around me. If it's not showing outside your window, it's springtime here now. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about fear and how to overcome fear, how to not succumb to fear, and how to allow yourself to really move forward towards your goals. Whatever your goals are, it's really important to leave fear in the dust in order to keep moving forward and achieving them. It's so easy for any of us to get caught up in fear sometimes. This really came to mind for me recently when I was working on my Jax, one of our people here is pointing at himself. I think we all can relate to fear at different points. But what came to mind recently was when I was working on my Japanese lesson and I was taking that next bold and brave step of talking to other people who already spoke Japanese. And so to me, that was quite a little fear to surmount. My first one, I did it one-on-one with just one person. That wasn't too bad, but I'm glad he couldn't see my hands ringing under the table because there was a lot of anxiety working its way out through my hands under the table while it looked very calm and collected up here for where the camera saw. And then the second lesson was, again, it took so much getting through that fear and overcoming it. And I thought maybe some of you have had to get used to ways that you overcome fear yourselves at times. For the second lesson that I did, it was a group lesson. And so I didn't know any of the people there. And it was run by 3 people in Israel. And it was in Japanese. And when I started, they were speaking in Hebrew. And so I was a little bit concerned about how this was going to work out. And I remember even before I started the lesson, it took so much courage in me to sign into the lesson. I was all excited when I signed up for it. I was ready to go. I thought, this is going to be great. I'm taking it to the next level. I'm going to have so much fun. I'm going to love it. And then the day came, and it was inching closer to the hour that it was going to start. And then 15 minutes before, I thought, I don't have to sign into it. I don't have to start it. 5 minutes before, I really don't have to do this. I could just not even log on and no one will see me make a mistake and it'll be all good. And I won't be reaching towards my goal, but I could do that. I could just not log in. And as I'm logging in, I'm thinking, I really shouldn't do this. My brain has all these things saying, no, let's skip this one. Let's do it later. Later always comes, right? When you say later. But if you don't do it now, guess what? You're probably not going to do it later either. So I realized this is the time to do it. And I logged on, and as we started to do our introductions in Japanese, and I said what I could for that, I ended it by saying, and I'm very, very nervous, by the way, just so everyone would know. And I was the first one of the students to introduce themselves, and after me, I noticed every single student said, and I'm nervous too. And I think that helped break the ice for all of us. And it's so funny because overcoming that fear that was so strong in that first class really helped me with the next time I needed to log in with a different group to do a different Japanese lesson. But when I was in that class, before I even got to the next one, I remember thinking many times while I was waiting for it to be my turn, I could just log out. I could have a computer problem and it logged me out. Whoops. But I didn't. I stuck with it. And I noticed one of the other students that was getting really nervous, and at one point he asked the teacher, he said, maybe can I just not talk for this? Can I just listen instead? And the teacher encouraged, no, we want to hear everybody talk. It's okay. You're all starting out. No worries. And then a couple minutes later, that same student said, oh, I got a business call. Sorry, I have to go. And I understood the pain. I understood wanting to log out, wanting to quit, wanting to not continue. But I pushed on and I did it, and it feels so good on the other side. And I bet each of you can relate to different aspects of that in your life with whatever you've had fears with, or whatever you've had anxiety with. Fear and anxiety often kind of blend into this same mix of things. There are some distinct differences between them, but they blend into that same mix. So I have 10 steps I want to talk to you today about overcoming fear so you can reach those victories and those goals that you have within your life. Whatever those fears are, you can apply these 10 steps to them and really be on your way up that mountain, whatever the mountain is for you. So the first step is to acknowledge your fear, to recognize it, put a name to it, and don't be ashamed of it. That's exactly what I did when I was starting that class and wanting to start the conversation. I knew that fear was there. I was battling it in my head already. And as soon as I logged in and I said my Hajenimashite, Angelica des, and I am very nervous today. I think I had a couple berries in there. That was my way of acknowledging it, because I also recognized that probably most of the people there were pretty nervous as well. We were all pretty much starting out, some may be more nervous than others, but most situations, many situations that you're involved in where you have that anxiety, there are probably other people around that are nervous too. If you have a fear of speaking and you're suddenly needing to speak in front of a group of people, most of the people in that room would be nervous to be in that position too. So remember that. Remember that it's not about comparing yourself to others either. It's not about, will this person do it better? What if I fail? It's about acknowledging what you're doing and being very present within that present moment, and don't be ashamed of your fear. A lot of times people can enter into situations, for example with that class, if I wanted to hold it in and act like I'm not nervous, I know what I'm doing, when inside it's boiling over, but I'm too afraid to acknowledge the fear to other people, that's going to dampen my voice more. I'm not going to feel like I can speak up. But by simply acknowledging it and being open and honest with yourself and with others, it helps you to find that courage within and to recognize, I'm nervous, but I've got this. I can do this. I'm going to give it my best shot. I might not do it great, but I'm going to give it my best shot anyway. Which brings us to number 2. Be prepared to make mistakes. And know that that's a good thing. We learn so much from our mistakes. One of the things that I really I loved, it was an interesting way that one of my students phrased this in a Reiki class last year. They had a question that they were answering in the class, and they were kind of struggling with the answer, but they wanted to continue with it, and they were doing their best to come up with it, and they said the wrong answer, but they were, they wanted to wait. They said, wait, hold on, and they really thought it through, and they said that afterwards they were so nervous, and they realized because of the way they had to work it through in their own head and in front of people, and there was that little bit of embarrassment that comes up that's just human nature. They said, I will never forget that again. They will always remember the concept. I don't even remember what it was about, but they felt really good about finding the answer on their own afterwards. And so be prepared to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. Utilize the energy of fear. If you've ever noticed when you're afraid of something, there is a lot of energy behind that. There is a lot of vibration and current that pushes you, and it pushes you either backed into a corner where you try to hide, or you can use that momentum and energy to push you to stand taller, to move forward, and to claim whatever it is your goal is, whatever you're working on, and feel that victory when you have achieved it. Which brings us to number 3, where you need to analyze the potential obstacles of what is going to get you to achieve your goal. So for one example of this, I'm going to do 3 different examples, but if you're using Japanese for an example, one of the potential obstacles of not wanting to speak in front of other people might be trying to pronounce the sounds. Different languages all carry their own types of sounds and intonations. Sometimes it can be really tricky to even just pronounce the sounds, let alone the words, if it's a language that's pretty far from yours. So analyzing that obstacle and just putting some practice, put some extra time into whatever the little details are that could become an obstacle instead. If you have a fear of climbing heights, one of the potential obstacles could be not breathing because you're afraid and you're climbing a high mountain, and it's so important to breathe anytime you're hiking or climbing or running. And so when you analyze that, it will make you remember, breathe deeply as you're climbing that mountain, and that will then create a whole wave of changes within your body, allowing you again to be more present, to be more centered, to have the oxygen you need to overcome and to make that climb. A third example of analyzing the potential obstacles would be if you have, let's say, a fear of needles, which I know is present here with someone today. But if you have that fear of needles, a potential obstacle could be having a bad phlebotomist. That's an obstacle you can't really change yourself, having somebody that isn't very great at doing the lab draw, but it's a potential obstacle. So figuring out how you will get through that so that you can overcome that obstacle, or you might find that they are actually quite good at what they do. So you may have thought of what those potential obstacles are and decided you're going to breathe through it if that happened, or maybe ask for someone else if it was really not good. But then when you recognize that that obstacle that was a potential didn't even come into play, then you can celebrate the fact that, wow, that was an easy breezy aspect of it. I worked through it. That didn't happen. That obstacle didn't happen. And then the fourth thing, though, if there are obstacles like that, learn how to mitigate them. So that's kind of what I said with figuring out if you have a bad phlebotomist, ask for another person. Breathe through the exercise. Put your mind in other places. Things like that. Figure out what the obstacles are and how to mitigate those. And then number 5 is to identify the triggers. So fear can feel like a really big, all-consuming bubble if you don't know what the trigger is behind it. Sometimes people can feel like they're afraid of bugs, and it's like this huge overarching fear, but there's probably something behind it. Or a fear of speaking in public. A lot of people have a fear of speaking in public. So if you don't identify the triggers and you don't know what specifically you're afraid of, it becomes this overwhelming thing that's really hard to put a face or a name to, and so it's really hard to overcome it. So you want to figure out what exactly makes you afraid of that concept. What aspect are you afraid of? With Japanese, for myself, it was not knowing the words. I wasn't so much worried about sounding odd to the people or not being able to pronounce things just right. To me, it was just being blank, and what if I don't even know any of the words? What if I can't understand what anybody says and I don't know the words? And so funny thing with that, when we were asking each other questions back and forth in Japanese and doing our best, sometimes we knew, sometimes we didn't know. Someone threw me a very easy question. We were talking about cats, and they said, "What are the names of your cats?" That I can answer in English because you're just coming up with your own names, which those don't have to be translated. And I really couldn't think of the names of my cats. I was able to come up with the Japanese words that I needed, but I had like the names of 3 of my cats and tried to fill in with a couple names of the cats outside because I really couldn't think of the names of my own cats in English. And that's okay. Those things happen. You need to laugh through it. A couple minutes later, we had moved on and somebody asked again. They said, "Have you remembered the names of your cats yet?" They asked me in Japanese. And so I was like, no, I'm very, very nervous, apparently. And that's okay. Roll with it when those things happen. Don't let it crush you. Don't let it embarrass you. Just roll with it, laugh it off, and hopefully you'll know the names of your cats the next day. And another example with that, so with the fear of needles, that is a very common fear a lot of people have, especially a lot of men seem to have fears of needles from phlebotomists that I talk to. And so one of the things with that is figuring out what is it that you're afraid of, because that's going to vary from person to person. Some people hate the sight of blood and they might faint when they see the sight of blood. For some people, it's just the very tip end of the needle. I know that's what my husband's part is. It's not about going into the skin or anything like that. It's about identifying. For him, it's just the one little aspect which can raise sheer terror until you are able to work through that and then applying some of these steps as we go along the way. But figure out whatever the fear is, narrow it down to whatever the tiniest bit is, whatever the part is that really is that triggering within you. That's going to really help you significantly in overcoming the fear, blasting through it with a ray of courage. Number 6 is to just do it. Just go for it. So I know we're only halfway in on our numbers 1 through 10, but number 6 is where you just have to take the plunge. Just do it. Whatever it is that you're afraid of, find ways to do it. Find ways to bring it into your life and exercise it. Go for it. Do it. Challenge yourself and see how it goes. Number 7 is to celebrate the victory of doing it. It doesn't matter if you did a terrible job. If you went, wow, well, I went for it and that really sucked. It's okay. Celebrate the victory that you did it, that you didn't hang up or you didn't log out or you didn't check out or not go or miss out on whatever it was. Celebrate the victory that you found the courage within yourself and you made it there and you did it and you are on your way to getting to where you're comfortable, and that fear is going to leave you. You're going to be moving towards your goals and bringing success into your life. Number 8 is to reassess how you did. So the first thing after you do it is to celebrate. You want to celebrate the victory. And then after you do that, give yourself a minute and then reassess. How did I do? How did I feel? What part of it still bothers me? Is it still just as horrifying as it was when I first was thinking about it? Or does it maybe have a little less of an edge to it now? It'll vary depending on what the fear is and how it works out, but just really reassess. How did you do? How do you feel about it? And then number 9 is to sit with that fear for a little bit. Again, be okay with the fear. Know it's okay. Don't be ashamed of it, and start to visualize success within your mind. Visualization has a huge impact on the brain. There have been studies, and I actually did this myself, about how when you are unable to exercise, but you visualize exercising within your brain, the body will start to physiologically change. You have to really visualize it. Feel it in your muscles, feel it in your body. I know when I was going through deep parts of the sickness and I literally couldn't even do the sit and be fit type of workouts, I would watch that show and I would visualize it within my mind. I would feel it within my body and eventually would get to the point where I could do some of it, and then eventually would get to the points where I was stronger than that. But really, it's fascinating to see how much visualization can work within the body and the mind. Whatever the fear is that you have, visualize yourself going through it and not being afraid. At first, you'll feel the fear even when you're visualizing it. You might get sweaty and clammy and not feel so great. You might feel nauseous or whatever butterflies you feel when you think of the fear. But let yourself work through that. Know that you're not in any imminent danger as you visualize it, and work with it on a day-to-day basis until eventually that fear begins to lessen and you start to realize you can visualize it and you don't feel like you're going to go get sick immediately because you are getting a little bit better with it. And then you get to the point where you're visualizing it and you feel pretty good about it. You feel pretty calm, like maybe you could do this thing. And it might be that when you're getting ready to go do it again, you feel those butterflies coming up. Bring yourself back into the visualization that you do when you know you're in a safe space, and it's going to help release those chemicals in the brain to help you know that it's okay, you can stay calm, you're going to be able to get through this, and it will help you to move forward in doing it more. Number 10 is let go of your excuses. It is so easy to find an excuse to not do something, whether it's something important or something you want to do, something little or something big that's going to change your future. There are so many ways to have an excuse of, I don't want to do it, I can't do it, I have to do this for someone else, or I just don't have time. Later never comes. If you just assign that I'll do it later, later never comes. Tomorrow isn't the day that you're going to suddenly just do it. So visualize it, get yourself ready, know that it's okay, and when the day comes that it is time to launch and to do whatever it is that you're afraid of, just do it. Do it in that moment. Get it done with. That way you can celebrate afterwards and reassess and see how you did. And each time you do that, you're going to find that as you reassess, it gets a little better. It gets a little better. You might even find that eventually you have joy in doing whatever you once had been afraid of. So instead of letting pain and fear dictate your decisions, choose to consciously choose courage and make those steps ahead. Charge forward courageously. How you respond to fear is what you use to break the old mold and launch into success. It's how you overcome fear and you tap into the inner power. You can do it. I know you can. I believe in you, and I can't wait to hear the success stories that you have and you create and you build as you move forward out of fear into success, into your inner power. Hope that gave you some good things to think about this week and that you can employ those 10 steps within your own life. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the share button or the like button or the love button. If you want to hear more of our videos, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed to us on YouTube. And we will see you next week. Thank you.